Good morning, baby. Good morning, Doug Rice. 8 o'clock in the morning, 22nd of November. My name is Doug Rice. How you doing? Good for you to join me this morning. I have an exciting offering. I have something I think most of you will appreciate, I don't know, maybe you'll be inspired somehow, but welcome to the show, Doug Rice by Twid, brought to you by Twidwear. I just love this gear, and now it's getting colder, folks. So there's no argument. There's no compromise. Get one of these things in your size. Come on, work with me. Doug Rice, good morning. Good morning. How are you? Well, I stayed up late last night. I don't usually do that, folks. I'm in bed by 8. That's usually the case. Had a lot on my mind. I've got a lot going on. I just don't know how long I can keep this show on, and it's pressing on me somewhat, but I am keeping my head up. Good morning, Negroes, holy royal family of Negroes. All praises to the most high God of all creation for allowing us to see this day. Okay? And so many have not. So many were denied the opportunity. Some slipped away. Some took their own course. But we are here and should be grateful and are grateful. Good morning once again. Hope I'm accompanying you on your drive to keep that goddamned grin off your Negro faces. All right. Yeah, I get a little loud. What can I say? I'm just a part of the crowd. All right. So today, with all that's going on, I felt it important. I felt it important that we get to the meat of the matter. So first, in trying to put this show together and quench your spiritual thirst and make you better, I got a video offering that I'll be proffering. Look all these words up, folks. I'm not using them for my health. They all have meaning and can give you intelligent health. No, I'm just kidding, wealth. All right, so 13th tribe, Arthur Kessler, chapter 1, part 1, rise and fall of the Kzars. Now, why is this important? Because what we're watching right now is another rise and fall of the Kzars. And these individuals, from Benjamin Netanyahu on down the line, all descendants of a people called Khazars. Now, the writer of this book, Arthur Kessler, sacrificed everything to get this information to us. And when I say us, I mean the world, I mean everyone at large. He wanted all of us to understand what we would be facing eventually. And facing is certainly what this is all about. This is all about refacing. This is all about refacing and retelling a story that, has really nothing to do with the individuals claiming to be the principal characters. But let me give you this, folks. Got a guy, his name is Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter is a guy, he is not a friend to Israel. He is not a friend to the Israelis. Let me say this, he's not a friend to Negroes. Okay? By what he says, you can believe that he has some question regarding anyone said to be chosen. So he's going to be a problem right off. But nonetheless, he offers an insight that I believe is set for Negro consumption. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this short clip, and I want you to take a good listen to what he says. And remember, this is a white man. Nice guy, very well-spoken, very, nice gentleman, understands the concepts of what we are all witnessing. But let's take a look at Mr. Ritter as he's just going to narrate a few things. I just want you to hear a few things. I just want you to know a few things, and I'll come back on the other side, and we'll see what we're talking about. Here we go.
The Israeli government. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu himself made a reference to I might get this wrong, the Amaleks. So it's from Genesis, from early Deuteronomy and other Old Testament chapters. But there are people in the region that harass the Israelis as they move from Egypt to Israel.
So let's not confuse the issue. Israelis is not who they harass. They harass Negroes. They harass people with tight black curly hair, usually, hair, and hair like wool, and skin brown. Yeah. Negroes. They weren't Israelis. Those are Khazarians, kind of what we're getting into. I'm sorry, did I disturb everybody? Let's get back to it.
They attacked their columns, etc. And so biblical justice was brought down upon them, and they were basically ordered by God to kill every man, woman, child, all the cattle, all the suckling pigs, everybody.
Correct. At that point, the Amalekites or Amaleks, whatever you call them, they were destined. They were prophesied by the Creator to be destroyed, and our purview as Negroes, true Hebrews, and true Israel was to destroy each and every one. I just wanted to clarify, old John over there.
Kill them all. That's a biblical reference. And the prime minister of Israel is saying that the Palestinians are the Amaleks, and they must be treated accordingly. So he's calling for genocide. Literally, the head of Israel is calling for genocide, and we didn't say a damn word, we being the United States. Where's John Kirby calling him out? Saying, oh, no, you can't say that. That's genocide. The head of security, the minister of security, is saying the same thing, that Palestinians must be eliminated in totality. You have other ministers articulating the desire to evict the Palestinians from Gaza, to remove them from Israel, to eliminate this stuff. A lot of people talk about Hamas, and they say, the Hamas charter, when it was written in the mid 80s, early 90s.
Okay, so he's going to get into something I touched on a little bit yesterday with Mr. Rappaport. If you haven't had a chance to check out the Rappaport video, I highly recommend you do, because some people just got to get it said to them direct. So I did that. But the phraseology he's about to use is kind of what I address. But notice the refacing of everything all the way around. Let's continue.
He's talked about from the river to the sea, and the U.S. Congresswoman from Michigan was condemned. It was by Congress. They voted to ostracize her because she said from the river to the sea. And they said,
now, I did not know this when I did yesterday's video.
That's anti-Semitic. You want the eradication of the Jews. You're promoting genocide. Hey, heads up, people. You know who invented the term from the river to the sea? The Likud Party of Israel.
What?
In their original charter, when they put it out, when they formed in the 1950s.
The Likud Party? Who is a part of the Likud Party, Mr. Ritter?
They don't believe in a Palestine. They don't believe in the Palestinian people. They believe that all the Palestinians should be eliminated, that Israel is Eretz Israel, the greater Israel, and they've never changed their outlook. Benjamin Netanyahu is a Likud Party member.
Whoa. So all this turmoil, let me try to get the understanding here. All this turmoil about the saying from the rivers to the sea, that saying that just had me, put my verbal foot up Michael Rappaport's behind and tell him to go on with his own kind. But that, I don't want to digress. You mean to tell me that was a Likud Party slogan, and this is the same slogan that they claim, expresses the thought that the state of Israel should not exist, that all of these people should be done away with. From the rivers to the sea, Palestinians must be free. I actually heard the origins of it. It's about the vote. It's about them getting one vote, one Palestinian, one vote. And the party that took on that saying from the Likud Party, I believe that he said was the Houthis or something, wasn't even involved in. So from the river to the sea, Palestinians must be free. Listen, folks, come here. Palestinians are Arabs. Arabs sold slaves, like you and me. So I don't want you to get the idea I'm somehow pro-Palestinian. I'm not pro-Palestinian. I mean, they helped rid themselves of Negroes and allowed these Ashkenazi imposters to just settle in. So they got what they deserved in that respect. But what they're doing to them now is just off the chain. I mean, you know, give me a break. 1,500 Israelis to now, what is this, 13,000 Arabs? Not Palestinians, Arabs. So I just wanted to clarify that. And, I thought I'd just interject. Like, subscribe, share, if you can.
Heading up the government. It is the Israeli government that is the government of genocide. And they are actively carrying out this policy of genocide towards the Palestinian people today as we speak. So guess what, Joe Biden? You are Genocide Joe. And everybody in your administration is a supporter and facilitator of genocide. And everybody in the mainstream media who continues to articulate the Israeli promoted narrative about Hamas and the Palestinian people are supporters of genocide. Straight up. This is mass murder on a scale. And the other thing that gets me is Kirby. He got a little angry. You know, I like it when John Kirby gets angry because it means he's been caught in a very morally compromising position. And he said, sometimes you have to wonder, do they even think before they speak?
You guys look up John Kirby. I believe he's some sort of official giving press conferences or interviews, and I understand he's pro-Israeli, but pro-Israeli, doesn't matter.
I know they've killed too many civilians. Really? What's enough? I mean, okay, we agree that 12,000, 13,000 is too many. We agree. What's acceptable, John? What's an acceptable number? How many premature babies is it okay to kill? I mean, one, John? One? We can pick one?
Well, interesting. He's growing conscious now. These guys, obviously, he doesn't know from whom he descends. This is the reason I don't take any of them seriously. Let me tell you something, folks. The kin of these individuals, the one we're looking at, the ones we listen to, the ones that surround us, all are guilty. All have the same charge against them. Look up Psalms 83. All the nations conspired, got together, enslaved us, according to prophecy, but nobody's innocent. Nobody gets a pass. And it's just kind of interesting as they talk about, what's happening to babies. It's a tragedy what's happening to babies, don't get me wrong. What's happening to old people, it's a tragedy what's happening to old people, don't get me wrong. It's happening to women being kidnapped, children being taken from their families forcibly, kidnapped, taken from where they live to someplace else. I don't know. The parallels seem to jump at me. And when I hear them complain about another society that suffers the ills they set upon Negroes, I don't know. My sympathy just somehow wanes.
How about two, John? If 3, 4, 5, what's a good enough number for you, John? How many thousands of Palestinians is it okay for Israel to kill? 1,000? 2, 5? Where would you have drawn the line, John? John, 8,000? I mean, and imagine that. Imagine the lottery of life where a Palestinian pulls the number 7,999. Oh, damn it. Bam, I'm dead. But that's okay. That's an okay number. There's nothing wrong with killing me, but the Palestinian that grabs number 8,000 can't kill him because.
What's interesting is where did this affinity toward caring about Palestinian life come from these creatures suddenly? You know what? As long as they're not Negroes and you kill enough people, suddenly all of them come out of the woodwork. And they just want their opinions expressed. They want to be heard. They want to be as liberal. But, I just consider where they all descend from. I always look at anything they say tongue in cheek. You always side eye every word that comes out of their sly, slithering mouths. Let me tell you, God didn't call them hissing individuals for nothing. So while I watch and listen You know, I make sure not a movement I'm going to be missing. All right, so I like that. What do you think? I thought that was cool, and he brought out some interesting stuff. I wanted to go on a little bit more, but I want to get into this 13th tribe deal, you know, which the 13th tribe. I mean, I wanted to preface that with the refacing that we see going on the planet. We got Netanyahu refacing himself, associating himself with those that had to do away with an entire society of people. He's the guy, and they're the people, and they'll determine what face is worn and who wears that face. But you know what? There's a history. There's a history that has been hidden, and origins matter. You know, origins matter. Don't they matter, folks? You know they do. They matter 100%. The origins of the people that are causing the current circumstance seen around the globe is a topic of heated discussion, especially these days. Now, they don't go too deep into the details regarding their usurping our identity. That touches too close to who Negroes are. But the Khazars were a people that exist today, and they exist right around the Israeli way. If you look at Ukrainians and you look at Israelis, you'll see a similarity that is astonishing. The reason that a similarity exists is because they're the same damn people. Now, the simple fix is to take the Israelis and relocate them up near Ukraine, just localize wherever Khazaria was, and put them right there, which more likely is the plan, as every man is going back to his own land. Okay, so with this, however, Arthur Kessler wrote this rather lengthy book. It's 99 pages, The 13th Tribe. Now, the reference to the 13th tribe applies to the Ashkenazi Khazarian converts that now call themselves Israelis, folks like Netanyahu. Please remember yesterday, folks, we found out that Netanyahu is a Polish Jew. Changed his name, his father changed his name from Milosevic, somebody looked that up, you remember, and changed that. His mother's maiden name was Segal, so Steven Seagal. Yeah. Anyway, his mother's name was Segal, his father's name was Milosevic, or something like that. Changed his name to Benjamin Netanyahu, as many of these Khazarian converts did when they were extracted from Europe and forcibly placed in Judea, not Palestine. We'll call it Palestine, but it was Judea, full of Negroes. We know this. Now, here's the thing. 13th tribe applies to these individuals because the 12 tribes are Negroes. And as Prince Nasir said, you left here black, you came back white, we will never accept you. So, I don't know, Arthur lost his life in writing this publication. His wife found murdered in their home. They said it was suicide. Why would he kill himself? Let's just stop. But we're going to go through this, and we're going to take our time. You know, we're going to go through every damn word while I narrate and rhyme. I don't care if it takes us days. I don't care how many ways. Here's the reason. Man lost his life to give this information, and now I'm presenting it to the Negro nation. Okay, whatever. All right, so if you like what we're doing, do me a favor, folks, because I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to make it, okay? Look below and give generously, you know, because in just a few days, if I'm not cool, I've got to go. I mean, it's that bad, but I've got to continue this course. You know, some things are pressed upon you. This is one of those things for me. All right, so let's take a look and see. The 13th tribe, Arthur Kessler. Now, you know, I'm gonna have them read this. You know, it's long, but I'll come in from time to time and just try to stay strong.
The 13th tribe, Arthur Kessler. Chapter 1, Part 1. Rise and fall of the Khazars. Rise. In Khazaria, sheep, honey, and Jews exist in large quantities. Muqaddasi, Descriptio Imperii Muslimici, 10th century. Part 1. About the time when Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the West, the eastern confines of Europe between the Caucasus and the Volga were ruled by a Jewish state, known as the Khazar Empire. At the peak of its power, from the 7th to the 10th centuries AD, it played a significant part in shaping the destinies of medieval, and consequently of modern, Europe. The Byzantine emperor and historian, Constantine Porphyrogenitus, 913-959, must have been well aware of this when he recorded in his treatise on court protocol point 1 that letters addressed to the Pope in Rome, and similarly those to the Emperor of the West, had a gold seal worth 2 solidi attached to them, whereas messages to the king of the Khazars displayed a seal worth 3 solidi. This was not flattery, but realpolitik. In the period with which we are concerned, wrote Barry, it is probable that the Khan of the Khazars was of little less importance in view of the imperial foreign policy than Charles the Great and his successors.
So what they're saying there, folks, as we go over the 13th tribe, part 1, rise and fall of the Kzars, is that 3 denarii better than 2, naturally. So the seal indicates prominence, indicates relevance, indicates importance. And that was the point regarding who they were at this time. Let's continue.
2. The country of the Khazars, a people of Turkish stock, occupied a strategic key position at the vital gateway between the Black Sea and the Caspian, where the great eastern powers of the period confronted each other. It acted as a buffer protecting Byzantium against invasions by the lusty barbarian tribesmen of the northern steppes, Bulgars, Magyars, Pecheneg, etc., and later the Vikings and the Russians.
So, understand exactly where these individuals come from and originate, and understand their strength of these Khazars, that they could hold back barbarian tribesmen of the northern steppes. They confronted each other, where the great eastern powers of that period confronted each other, and Khazaria acted as a buffer, protecting Byzantine against invasions by, listen to what he said, the lusty barbarian. Lusty means the rapey white men. Shall we say it again? Lusty barbarians means rapey white men. That's what they are, and that's now, and that's what they were then. Oh, that fit well. Lusty barbarian tribesmen of the northern steppes, Bulgars, Bulgaria, Magyars, ooh, y'all help me with that one, Pechegins, and later the Vikings and the Russians. All right, so setting the tone for who these people were. They weren't weak, they were aplenty. Let's see more.
But equally, or even more important both, from the point of view of Byzantine diplomacy and of European history, is the fact that the Khazar armies effectively blocked the Arab avalanche in its most devastating early stages, and thus prevented the Muslim conquest of Eastern Europe.
So these people have been fighting for a minute. You hear what I'm saying? The descendants of the Khazars are the Jews in Israel. And same people, Muslims, were fighting against these Khazars back then. They've been enemies forever, and they know it.
Professor Dunlop of Columbia University, a leading authority on the history of the Khazars, has given a concise summary of this decisive yet virtually unknown episode.
I want you to listen carefully. And before we get into this, do me a favor, folks. Like, subscribe, share. Like, subscribe, share. You got to share the Doug Rice Show. Now, not because of me, the Doug Rice Show. I am Doug Rice, but because of the information that is being imparted. It's not about anything more than getting this in the minds of Negroes, because this is the last bit of information they ever wanted us to hear. Let's continue.
The Khazar country lay across the natural line of advance of the Arabs. Within a few years of the death of Muhammad, AD 632, the armies of the Caliphate, sweeping northward through the wreckage of two empires and carrying all before them, reached the great mountain barrier of the Caucasus. This barrier once passed, the road lay open to the lands of Eastern Europe.
Stop. Okay, wait. We are going to be stopping from time to time because I got to tell you, folks, this information is so, it has such weight. There's such gravity. Remember the mention of the Caucasus and that there was a barrier in regards to the Caucasus. That's what it was considered. So the Khazar country lay across the natural line of advance of the Arabs. And within a few years of the death of Muhammad, AD 632, those armies of the Caliphate sweeping northward through the wreckage of two empires and carrying all before them, reached the great barrier of the Caucasus. That's very, very interesting. Now let's see what happens afterwards.
As it was, on the line of the Caucasus, the Arabs met the forces of an organized military power, which effectively prevented them from extending their conquests in this direction. The wars of the Arabs and the Khazars, which lasted more than 100 years, though little known, have thus considerable historical importance. The Franks of Charles Martel on the field of Tours turned the tide of Arab invasion. At about the same time, the threat to Europe in the east was hardly less acute.
Okay, so it wasn't too much of a threat to the east, but Arabs and the Kzars had a war that lasted more than 100 years. Very, very, very little known. Now, remember, folks, the Kzars are precisely folks like Benjamin Netanyahu. You know, these are the descendants of the Kzars. I'm going to give you the backstory one more time because I think it's important. Here it is. So the Khazars lived in this status and were eventually conquered by the Prince of Ukraine. And by default, when you are conquered by another country, that portion of your conquered population that is not killed becomes a part of your country. And so by default, Khazarians became Ukrainians. But of course, they weren't naturalized Ukrainians and were probably run out of Ukraine. A defeated people settling in the land of their defeat is not really a complete picture that they want to see. I don't think that was agreeable. And so this explains why these individuals, these pagan heathens, now converted Jews, guardians basically of Europe and some of the lower portions of what they now call the Middle East, conquered by the Prince of Ukraine, with nowhere else to go, this mass group of people scattered throughout Europe, and took with them the practices of Khazarians. And those practices were not welcome in Europe. Those practices folded with Judaistic bastardization of true Hebrew worship, usury, interest, all sorts of activity that had no association with true worship. And they took and spread through and washed down Europe and into the Middle East, what they call the Middle East, and slowly replaced the population by selling us out of position, that population being Negroes, in concordance, hand in hand with Arabs, now Palestine. Now, this is the weirdest little relationship these folks got. They hate each other, but from time to time they help each other, and they helped each other get rid of us. Let's not forget that. So I wanted to pause there. I think it's important. Let's continue, shall we? I want to go from wherever they were. We'll just go from where they were.
The victorious Muslims were met and held by the forces of the Khazar kingdom. It can scarcely be doubted that but for the existence of the Khazars in the region north of the Caucasus, Byzantium, the bulwark of European civilization in the east, would have found itself outflanked by the Arabs, and the history of Christendom and Islam might well have been very different from what we know. Point 3.
Now that's an interesting point they made. So these Khazarians helped defeat or defend Europe from being Muslimed, from being Islamists, from what, you know what I'm saying.
It is perhaps not surprising, given these circumstances, that in 732, after a resounding Khazar victory over the Arabs, the future Emperor Constantine V married a Khazar princess. In due time, their son became the Emperor Leo IV, known as Leo the Khazar.
Did anybody know that? Did you guys know that? I didn't know that.
Ironically, the last battle in the war, AD 737, ended in a Khazar defeat. But by that time, the impetus of the Muslim Holy War was spent, the Caliphate was rocked by internal dissensions, and the Arab invaders retraced their steps across the Caucasus without having gained a permanent foothold in the north.
Whoa! Listen to that. Wow, the Arab invaders retraced their steps across the Caucasus. Now they haven't gained a permanent foothold in the north. That's interesting.
The Kzars became more powerful than they had previously been. A few years later, probably AD 740, the king, his court, and the military ruling class embraced the Jewish faith, and Judaism became the state religion of the Khazars.
Stop. Now, we're going to do that again. Listen to that.
A few years later, probably AD 740, the king, his court, and the military ruling class embraced the Jewish faith.
That's where Benjamin Netanyahu originates. Origins matter. And it doesn't mention that these people originate from Judea. It has no mention that they originate from Palestine. It doesn't give that indication. What it says clearly, and we'll go over it again. What it says clearly.
A few years later, probably AD 740, the king, his court, and the military ruling class embraced the Jewish faith, and Judaism became the state religion of the Khazars.
That's it. That's the end of it. Stop telling people that you have a claim to a land you don't come from, BB.
No doubt their contemporaries were as astonished by this decision as modern scholars were when they came across the evidence in the Arab, Byzantine, Russian, and Hebrew sources. One of the most recent comments is to be found in a work by the Hungarian Marxist historian, Dr. Antal Bartha. His book on the Magyar society in the 8th and 9th centuries has several chapters on the Khazars, as during most of that period the Hungarians were ruled by them. Yet their conversion to Judaism is discussed in a single paragraph, with obvious embarrassment. It reads,
wait, did you hear that? With obvious embarrassment. Listen.
Our investigations cannot go into problems pertaining to the history of ideas, but we must call the reader's attention to the matter of the Khazar kingdom's state religion. It was the Jewish faith which became the official religion of the ruling strata of society. Needless to say, the acceptance of the Jewish faith as the state religion of an ethnically non-Jewish people could be the subject of interesting speculations.
Uh-oh, wait a minute, folks, hold up. So, how you doing this morning? This is the Doug Rice Show. Hope I caught you in a good mood, all right? So, wow, we're going through the 13th tribe, rise and fall of the Kzars. This is brought to you by Twid, if you don't know. Twid, that's what I do. I want somebody to order clothing from Twid. I want face cream. I want beard oil. I want large orders. Go approach your school. Go approach anything. Don't approach your church. I wasn't about to say that. Don't even think it. Go approach everybody and tell them to put on some Twid wear because that's what I do. I thought I'd just plug it. You know, it is a responsibility, is it not, to be, the pitchman when you are a sponsor. And so, sponsor, I do. So here's the deal. Twidwear.com. Go to twidwear.com. Use the promo code TDRS. Get 10% off on any purchase. And that's about the plug. All right. Now, you heard them hurt their feelings over there, right? Good Lord, boy. I hope somebody shares this with every one of your oppressive friends you may keep close. Who knows? They might learn a thing or two. Let's continue, folks.
We shall, however, confine ourselves to the remark that this official conversion, in defiance of Christian proselytizing by Byzantium, the Muslim influence from the East, and in spite of the political pressure of these two powers, to a religion which had no support from any political power, but was persecuted by nearly all.
Whoa! So you chose Judaism, persecuted by nearly all Negroes. Okay, no political power, Negroes, right? And you could have chose Catholicism, you could have chose Islam, but you chose Judaism, filled with Negroes, powerless, more likely, scattered, all whatever our current circumstance were. You know what I think? I think they saw an opportunity. These are, look, folks, go with me on this, don't you? What are you talking about? That's a calculated move. You're caught between a rock and a hard place, Catholicism and Islam, and you choose the weakest link. Well, what does that make you think? I think this was a plan. I think this was a plan for them to obtain their own land. I think this was sinister in its making, because the land they thought was there for the taking. Yeah, well, it just landed.
Has come as a surprise to all historians concerned with the Khazars, and cannot be considered as accidental, but must be regarded as a sign of the independent policy pursued by that kingdom, which leaves us only slightly more bewildered than before. Yet whereas the sources differ in minor detail, the major facts are beyond dispute. What is in dispute is the fate of the Jewish Khazars after the destruction of their empire in the 12th or 13th century. On this problem the sources are scant, but various late medieval Khazar settlements are mentioned in the Crimea, in the Ukraine, in Hungary, Poland, and Lithuania. The general picture that emerges from these fragmentary pieces of information is that of a migration of Khazar tribes and communities into those regions of Eastern Europe, mainly Russia and Poland, where, at the dawn of the modern age, the greatest concentratines of Jews were found.
Okay, so here we get a clarification in that these individuals give a general picture that they migrated into places, Ukraine, Hungary, Poland, Lithuania, Eastern Europe, Russia, and this is at the dawn of the modern age. This is very interesting information, folks. Like, subscribe, and share.
This has led several historians to conjecture that a substantial part, and perhaps the majority of Eastern Jews, and hence of world Jewry, might be of Khazar, and not of Semitic origin.
You think? No. You think that could be a possibility? Seriously? I don't know, man. That's a reach. You got any proof?
The far-reaching implications of this hypothesis may explain the great caution exercised by historians in approaching this subject, if they do not avoid it altogether. Thus, in the 1973 edition of the Encyclopedia Judaica, the article Kzars is signed by Dunlop, but there is a separate section dealing with Khazar Jews after the fall of the kingdom, signed by the editors, and written with the obvious intent to avoid upsetting believers in the dogma of the chosen race.
Oh, right between your eyes. Did you like that one? Huh? So there's been a challenge to their assertions from the very beginning because they know their history, man. I mean, and how dare these creatures kill 13,000 people who assert they don't belong in Palestine correctly. These individuals who tell Jews that you will have no peace because you don't belong here, they're right. They're 100% right. They know the truth. Here's the truth.
The Turkish-speaking Khazars, a fundamentalist Jewish sect of the Crimea, Poland, and elsewhere have affirmed a connection with the Khazars, which is perhaps confirmed by evidence from folklore and anthropology as well as language. There seems to be a considerable amount of evidence attesting to the continued presence in Europe of descendants of the Khazars.
Well now, there seems to be. Who are these people? Who are these people claiming to be Jews? the jewels of God. Let me tell you something. Jewels get shined by their owners. They don't shine.
How important, in quantitative terms, is that presence of the Caucasian sons of Japheth in the tents of Shem?
Uh-oh. Whoa. I'm sorry, what did you say, sir?
How important, in quantitative terms, is that presence of the Caucasian sons of Japheth in the tents of Shem? One of the most radical propounders of the hypothesis concerning the Khazar origins of Jewry is the professor of medieval Jewish history at Tel Aviv University, A.N. Polyak. His book Khazaria, in Hebrew, was published in 1944 in Tel Aviv, and a second edition in 1951.5. In his introduction he writes that the facts demand a new approach, both to the problem of the relations between the Khazar Jewry and other Jewish communities, and to the question of how far we can go in regarding this Khazar Jewry as the nucleus of the large Jewish settlement in Eastern Europe. The descendants of this settlement, those who stayed where they were, those who emigrated to the United States and to other countries, and those who went to Israel, constitute now the large majority of world Jewry.
Did you hear that, folks? Are you listening? Did you hear that? This is from their own mouths. Now, you need to understand these people are fighting a battle to the death, either theirs or the Palestinians, whatever's left. And they're fighting to hide, protect, and continue a lie. They're not who they claim to be. Their own historians speak. See?
This was written before the full extent of the Holocaust was known, but that does not alter the fact that the large majority of surviving Jews in the world is of Eastern European, and thus perhaps mainly of Khazar origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan but from the Volga, not from Canaan but from the Caucasus, once believed to be the cradle of the Aryan race, and that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, Uyghur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Whoa! Okay, let's pause for that cause. Did you hear that? Because if you didn't, let me read it again, okay? It's real simple, folks. These folks are not who they claim to be. That their ancestors come from Khazaria, that they more derive from the Caucasus Mountains than they do anywhere else. They are the Aryan race. They are not from Abraham. They are from Ur. They are not from Isaac. They're Huns. You look at Benjamin Netanyahu, you look at the typical Israeli, and you're looking at a European white dude. That's what's up, man. Stop. Just stop. You and I know you're looking at Peter. You and I know you're looking at Bob. Okay? You know, you're not looking at Yazir or whoever you might name a person from that region. You're not looking at an olive-skinned individual that may, in fact, darken with the sun. You're not looking at the lightened cousins of Negroes. Lightened. Yes, they were affected too by the surge of caucasity. It looked just like Mr. Ritter, Scott Ritter. You're red-haired, red-faced, white-skinned Europeans from the Caucasus Mountains. That is who Israelis are. That is why they cannot be in the region in any peace, because they don't belong there. Yet they're claiming that that's where they're from. Another thing before we continue, anybody want to investigate why the state of Israel doesn't permit DNA tests to be provided to their citizens? You know why? Here's what they've said. There'd be too much confusion regarding the results. Even they know they're not who they say they are. They are imposters, converts, Europeans. Is that a good break? I liked it. Let's continue. This is the Doug Rice Show. I'm just trying to do my deal. Here we go.
Should this turn out to be the case, then the term anti-Semitism would become void of meaning, based on a misapprehension shared by both the killers and their victims.
Oh, So, in other words, take the term anti-Semitic and shove it up your goddamned ass. One curse word. Okay.
The story of the Khazar Empire, as it slowly emerges from the past, begins to look like the most cruel hoax which history has ever perpetrated.
All right, that's part one. What do you think? Is he coming up with facts? I don't know. Is he coming in with facts? Are you liking what you're hearing so far? Well, then promote and support this show, please. I need it.
Part 2. Attila was, after all, merely the king of a kingdom of tents. His state passed away, whereas the despised city of Constantinople remained a power. The tents vanished, the towns remained. The Hun state was a whirlwind. Huscastle, 6, a 19th century Orientalist, implying that the Khazars shared, for similar reasons, a similar fate. Yet the Hun presence on the European scene lasted a mere 80 years, from circa 372, when the Huns first started to move westward from the steppes north of the Caspian, to the death of Attila in 453, whereas the kingdom of the Khazars held its own for the best part of 4 centuries. They too lived chiefly in tents, but they also had large urban settlements, and were in the process of transformation from a tribe of nomadic warriors into a nation of farmers, cattle breeders, fishermen, vine growers, traders, and skilled craftsmen.
So now we are getting a detailed idea of exactly where the Khazarians came from, developed their practices, their habits, their employment. Let's delve into this.
Soviet archaeologists have unearthed evidence for a relatively advanced civilization which was altogether different from the Hun whirlwind. They found the traces of villages extending over several miles, 7 with houses connected by galleries to huge cattle sheds, sheep pens, and stables. These measured 331/210 to 14 meters and were supported by columns. 8 Some remaining ox plows showed remarkable craftsmanship. So, did the preserved artifacts, buckles, clasps, ornamental saddle plates? Of particular interest were the foundations, sunk into the ground, of houses built in a circular shape. 9 According to the Soviet archaeologists, these were found all over the territories inhabited by the Khazars, and were of an earlier date than their normal, rectangular buildings. Obviously, the roundhouses symbolized the transition from portable, dome-shaped tents to permanent dwellings, from the nomadic to a settled, or rather semi-settled, existence.
So what they're doing, let me frame it, is they're giving you the development of the Khazarian nation. They're giving you going from nomads, from folks living in tents, and folks, the building practices. And where are they? They are thousands of miles from Judea. They are in Russia, and that's where the Khazarians, who are direct descendants related to Benjamin Netanyahu in reverse. So that is who these people are. That's why it's an offense to thinking people that anybody that does any kind of study and delves into the history of these individuals that have killed so many people for reasons that are a lie. This is bad business, folks, but let's continue.
For the contemporary Arab sources tell us that the Khazars only stayed in their towns, including even their capital, Itil, during the winter. Come spring, they packed their tents, left their houses and sallied forth with their sheep or cattle into the steppes, or camped in their cornfields or vineyards. The excavations also showed that the kingdom was, during its later period, surrounded by an elaborate chain of fortifications, dating from the 8th and 9th centuries, which protected its northern frontiers facing the open steppes. These fortresses formed a rough semicircular arc from the Crimea, which the Khazars ruled for a time, across the lower reaches of the Donets and the Don to the Volga, while towards the south they were protected by the Caucasus, to the west by the Black Sea, and to the east by the Khazar Sea, the Caspian. To this day, the Muslims, recalling the Arab terror of the Khazar raids, still call the Caspian, a sea as shifting as the nomads, and washing to their steppeland parts, Bahr al-Khazar, the Khazar Sea. WE0. Allen, A History of the Georgian People, London, 1952.
So what are we looking at here? We have now even more proof. Let me tell you what this guy does. Mr. Kessler, we're reviewing the 13th tribe and part 1, Rise and Fall of the Khazars. We are identifying and locating their origins, and their origins speak of Caucasus Mountains. All right, their development goes from nomads to folks that build better, to folks that go from north to south. These individuals are nowhere near the Middle East. In all of their development, they are nowhere near Palestine. They're nowhere near Judea. They are European white people from the Caucasus Mountains, I might add. So Benjamin Netanyahu, the guy running the state of Israel, is a Polish Jew whose name is not even Netanyahu. What are we doing? What are we talking about? And you know what? The arrogance of these individuals. Let me just stop for a minute, because I'm going to take a pause here. Let me talk about these the folks in the state of Israel. Let me tell you the arrogance. Everything they have, somebody gave them. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Everything they have, other countries gave them. They are a created state. They are a created country out of nowhere, out of thin air. The Balfour Declaration, made an act in 1948, put these people directly in the path of success and wealth and their own state. And the weird thing is now they talk as if they've always been great. Let me tell you something. You were rescued. Do you not understand that? I mean, this isn't rocket science, but they got their chests all out. You know, they're killing people. You know the gear they're in? I was in the military, man. The gear they're in makes them look like they're from modern warfare. They're geared up, aren't they? They're geared up. They're geared up like military folks want to get geared up. Everybody's got the same gear. All of it was given to them. They haven't earned a goddamned thing, especially the world's respect. Who are these creatures? Who are they? See, when you get to the meat of the matter of who they are, when you understand their origins, and you juxtapose those origins and facts to what they're doing to people, and for the reasons they're doing it, they're saying that they are entitled to the land that they are on. They are telling people that they are returning from wherever they came from to the land because this is their original land and they slew the Amalekites. This is a lie. So many people are dying because these European Ashkenazi converts from Khazaria assert a lie. And they're put upon people as a way to exercise white supremacy. That's what this is about. They come from Nazis. They come from the Aryan crowd. They come from the Caucasus Mountains. So within them is the same need to feel superior. And they're exercising that need right now. And they're in error. Now, what do you think God is going to do? That's my real question. I think we all know, and eventually it will happen, and they got to go. This is a sad state of affairs, folks. I can't imagine why Negroes aren't thinking about it more. There's so many telling jokes. Let's continue.
However, the northern chain of fortifications marked merely an inner ring, protecting the stable core of the Khazar country. The actual boundaries of their rule over the tribes of the north fluctuated according to the fortunes of war. At the peak of their power, they controlled or exacted tribute from some 30 different nations and tribes inhabiting the vast territories between the Caucasus, the Aral Sea, the Ural Mountains, the town of Kiev, and the Ukrainian steppes. The people under Khazar suzerainty included the Bulgars, Burtas, Guz, Magyars, Hungarians, the Gothic and Greek colonies of the Crimea, and the Slavonic tribes in the northwestern woodlands. Beyond these extended dominions, Khazar armies also raided Georgia and Armenia and penetrated into the Arab Caliphate as far as Mosul. In the words of the Soviet archaeologist M.I. Artemonov 10, until the 9th century, the Khazars had no rivals to their supremacy in the regions north of the Black Sea and the adjoining steppe and forest regions of the Dnieper. The Khazars were the supreme masters of the southern half of Eastern Europe for a century and a half, and presented a mighty bulwark, block ing the Ural-Caspian gateway from Asia into Europe. During this whole period, they held back the onslaught of the nomadic tribes from the east.
Okay, so now we kind of get an idea of their personage. They seem a warlike group. They seem a group that is accustomed to killing and murdering, and they seem to be that way to this very day. We see the bloodlust in the minds of the Israelis interplaying with the deaths of Palestinians, and a long history of murderous activity is in their lineage. Let's not fool ourselves, folks. Let's stop with the subterfuge, the self-denial. I don't understand this. This is who they are. This is them. This ain't anything else. I mean, and the words are coming from their own people. I mean, what the?
Taking a bird's-eye view of the history of the great nomadic empires of the East, the Khazar kingdom occupies an intermediary position in time, size, and degree of civilization between the Hun and Avar empires which preceded, and the Mongol Empire that succeeded it. Part 3. Who were these remarkable people, remarkable as much by their power and achievements as by their conversion to a religion of outcasts?
I wanted that read. Conversion to a religion of outcasts. Who are those outcasts? Negroes. Negroes have always been outcast because of our station, because of our being set apart. They know who we are. It's why they conspired against us. It's why these Khazarians have usurped our position, calling themselves Hebrews, but in fact are Europeans. It's very interesting to see it written and to have it read to you, to have the information impact you. So I got to tell you, folks, this is some interesting. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, share. Let me put that down there for you. Like, subscribe, and share. Get your folks looking at this live. You got to hear this.
The descriptions that have come down to us originate in hostile sources and cannot be taken at face value. As to the Khazars, an Arab chronicler 11 writes, they are to the north of the inhabited earth towards the seventh clime, having over their heads the constellation of the plough. Their land is cold and wet. Accordingly, their complexions are white, their eyes blue, their hair flowing and predominantly reddish, their bodies large and their natures cold. Their general aspect is wild.
Khazarians, Netanyahu, Israelis, Ukrainians, white folks. I mean, what are you talking about? You don't look, you understand. You know what barbarians are? You know what Germanic tribes are? They are barbarians, Neanderthals, wild man that just do all kind of crazy, you know what I'm saying? You've seen these individuals. How many of them are Negroes? Yeah. So we know what we're talking about. And what's bothersome is these individuals that are in Israel claim to be folks that come from there and not the Neanderthals we see with fair hair. All right. Sorry.
After a century of warfare, the Arab writer obviously had no great sympathy for the Khazars. Nor had the Georgian or Armenian scribes, whose countries, of a much older culture, had been repeatedly devastated by Khazar horsemen. A Georgian chronicle, echoing an ancient tradition, identifies them with the hosts of Gog and Magog.
Arthur Kessler is the author of this book. He is a Jew. And he got taken out because he wrote this book, and I thought I'd tell you.
wild men with hideous faces and the manners of wild beasts, eaters of blood. Point 12. An Armenian writer refers to the horrible multitude of Khazars with insolent, broad, lashless faces and long falling hair, like women. Point 13.
Whoa! Are we getting detailed?
Lastly, the Arab geographer Istaqri, one of the main Arab sources, has this to say of 14.
Uh-oh.
The Khazars do not resemble the Turks. They are black-haired, and are of two kinds, one called the Kara Khazars, black Khazars, who are swarthy verging on deep black as if they were a kind of Indian, and a white kind, AK Kzars, who are strikingly handsome.
Stop! I need everybody to hear that and look some stuff up. So there are black Khazars. I want that verified. I want to hear that again.
The Khazars do not resemble the Turks. They are black-haired, and are of two kinds, one called the Kara Khazars, black Khazars, who are swarthy verging on deep black as if they were a kind of Indian, and a white kind,
Wow.
AK Kzars, who are strikingly handsome.
Yeah, let's get that.
This is more flattering, but only adds to the confusion. For it was customary among Turkish peoples to refer to the ruling classes or clans as white, to the lower strata as black.
What? Really? You was accustomed? What? Really? What? Wow, that's kind of odd.
Thus there is no reason to believe that the white Bulgars were whiter than the black Bulgars, or that the white Huns, the Ephthalites, who invaded India and Persia in the 5th and 6th centuries were of fairer skin than the other Hun tribes which invaded Europe.
Okay.
Istaqri's black-skinned Khazars, as much else in his and his colleagues' writings, were based on hearsay and legend, and we are none the wiser regarding the Khazars' physical appearance or their ethnic origins. The last question can only be answered in a vague and general way. But it is equally frustrating to inquire into the origins of the Huns, Alans, Avars, Bulgars, Magyars, Bashkirs, Burdas, Sabirs, Uyghurs, Saragars, Onagars, Utigars, Kutragars, Tarniaks, Katragars, Kabars, Zabandars, Pecheneg, Guz, Cumans, Kipchaks, and dozens of other tribes or people who at one time or another in the lifetime of the Khazar kingdom passed through the turnstiles of those migratory playgrounds.
Well, he did that, didn't he? Well, he did that. Man, he did that. Got me a little jealous on that read.
Even the Huns, of whom we know much more, are of uncertain origin. Their name is apparently derived from the Chinese Haiyan Nu, which designates warlike nomads in general, while other nations applied the name Hun in a similarly indiscriminate way to nomadic hordes of all kinds, including the White Huns mentioned above, the Sabirs, Magyars, and Khazars. It is amusing to note that while the British in World War I used the term Hun in the same pejorative sense, in my native Hungary schoolchildren were taught to look up to our glorious Hun forefathers with patriotic pride. An exclusive rowing club in Budapest was called Hunnia, and Attila is still a popular first name.
Wow.
In the 1st century AD, the Chinese drove these disagreeable Hun neighbors westward, and thus started one of those periodic avalanches which swept for many centuries from Asia towards the west. From the 5th century onward, many of these westward-bound tribes were called by the generic name of Turks. The term is also supposed to be of Chinese origin, apparently derived from the name of a hill, and was subsequently used to refer to all tribes who spoke languages with certain common characteristics, the Turkic language group. Thus the term Turk, in the sense in which it was used by medieval writers, and often also by modern ethnologists, refers primarily to language and not to race.
Interesting.
In this sense, the Huns and Khazars were Turkic people, but not the Magyars, whose language belongs to the Finno-Ugrian language group. The Khazar language was supposedly a Chuvash dialect of Turkish, which still survives in the autonomous Chuvash Soviet Republic, between the Volga and the Sura. The Chuvash people are actually believed to be descendants of the Bulgars, who spoke a dialect similar to the Khazars. But all these connections are rather tenuous, based on the more or less speculative deductions of Oriental philologists. All we can say with safety is that the Khazars were a Turkic tribe, who erupted from the Asian steppes, probably in the 5th century of our era.
Now, I got a question, folks. How long how long did they feel this was going to get kept under wraps? I mean, did they think that they would forever live a lie of deceit and subterfuge and just straight denial? I mean, you know, with the advent of the internet and with Google and Yahoo, all the other, how long did they think this lie was going to go? I mean, that's really the only thing I want to know. And I'm curious, when all this was in its initial stages, you know, it was Jews that owned all the newspaper pages. And so they controlled the narrative, and they controlled all that was said. They controlled all that was written, and they controlled all that was read. And now suddenly that information is out of their hands, and it's free. The truth is out, and they just can't stand it. So that's the reason I do what I do. I try to deliver this straight to you. I want you to please like, subscribe, and share. But if you truly want to show me you care, look below and show me so, okay? Because I need to keep going. This is the Doug Rice Show. Let's continue.
The origin of the name Khazar and the modern derivations to which it gave rise has also been the subject of much ingenious speculation. Most likely the word is derived from the Turkish root gaz, to wander, and simply means nomad. Of greater interest to the non-SPE Sciolists are some alleged modern derivations from it, among them the Russian Cossack and the Hungarian Hussar, both signifying martial horseman. Kzars is probably derived via the Serbo-Croat from Greek references to Khazars, and also the German Ketzer, heretic, a Jew. If these derivations are correct, they would show that the Khazars had a considerable impact on the imagination of a variety of peoples in the Middle Ages. Part 4. Persian and Arab chronicles provide an attractive combination of legend and gossip column. They may start with the creation and end with stop-press tidbits. Thus Yaqubi, a 9th century Arab historian, traces the origin of the Khazars back to Japheth, third son of Noah.
Okay, we're about to get into the weeds. Can somebody send a link to BB? I'm just asking anybody if you can get this to anyone who's a Jew. That would probably be good too.
The Japheth motive recurs frequently in the literature, while other legends connect them with Abraham or Alexander the Great. One of the earliest factual references to the Khazars occurs in a Syriac chronicle by Zechariah Reeder. It was actually written by an anonymous compiler and named after an earlier Greek historian whose work is summarized in the compilation, dating from the middle of the 6th century. It mentions the Khazars in a list of people who inhabit the region of the Caucasus.
I'm sorry. Did you guys? I'm sorry. I didn't hear him. What is it? What did it mention, bro? Because you said something.
It mentions the Khazars in a list of people who inhabit the region of the Caucasus. Other sources indicate that they were already much in evidence a century earlier, and intimately connected with the Huns. In AD 448, the Byzantine Emperor Theodosius II sent an embassy to Attila which included a famed rhetorician by name of Priscus. He kept a minute account not only of the diplomatic negotiations, but also of the court intrigues and goings-on in Attila's sumptuous banqueting hall. He was in fact the perfect gossip columnist, and is still one of the main sources of information about Hun customs and habits. But Priscus also has anecdotes to tell about a people subject to the Huns whom he calls the Kzars, that is, very likely, the AK Khazars, or White Khazars, as distinct from the Black Kara Khazars. The Kzars are also mentioned as a nation of warriors by Jordanes, the great Goth historian, a century later, and the so-called geographer of Ravenna expressly identifies them with the Khazars. This is accepted by most modern authorities. A notable exception was Marquardt, but see Dunlop's refutation of his views, opposite, pages 7f. Castle, for instance, points out that Priscus's pronunciation and spelling follows the Armenian and Georgian Khazir. The Byzantine emperor, Priscus tells us, tried to win this warrior race over to his side, but the greedy Khazar chieftain, named Karadak, considered the bribe offered to him an aid-quate and sided with the Huns.
Okay, so the wheel and deal has been in them for as long as they've been around, and this to me has that kind of sound. I'm just saying.
Attila defeated Karadak's rival chieftains, installed him as the sole ruler of the Kzars, and invited him to visit his court. Karadak thanked him profusely for the invitation, and went on to say that it would be too hard on a mortal man to look into the face of a god. For, as one cannot stare into the sun's disk, even less could one look into the face of the greatest god without suffering injury. Attila must have been pleased, for he confirmed Karadak in his rule. Priscus's chronicle confirms that the Khazars appeared on the European scene about the middle of the 5th century as a people under Hunnish sovereignty, and may be regarded, together with the Magyars and other tribes, as a later offspring of Attila's horde.
All right, so whoa, hold on.
The collapse of the Hun Empire.
Hold on, part 5. All right, folks. Wanted to take a quick break here, let you know to love you coming in. Please like, subscribe, and share this live. Not doing so would be a sin. I wanted to just throw that out there. This is part 5, 13th tribe, rise and fall of the Khazars, part 1. Within part 1, this is part 5, and we're talking about the collapse of the Hun Empire. Here we go.
Part 5. The collapse of the Hun Empire after Attila's death left a power vacuum in Eastern Europe, through which once more, wave after wave of nomadic hordes swept from east to west, prominent among them the Uyghurs and Avars. The Khazars during most of this period seemed to be happily occupied with raiding the rich Transcaucasian regions of Georgia and Armenia, and collecting precious plunder. During the second half of the 6th century, they became the dominant force among the tribes north of the Caucasus. A number of these tribes, the Sabirs, Saragars, Samandars, Balangars, etc., are from this date onward no longer mentioned by name in the sources. They had been subdued or absorbed by the Khazars. The toughest resistance, apparently, was offered by the powerful Bulgars. But they too were crushingly defeated, circa 641, and as a result the nation split into two. Some of them migrated westward to the Danube, into the region of modern Bulgaria, others northeastward to the Middle Volga, the latter remaining under Khazar suzerainty. We shall frequently encounter both Danube Bulgars and Volga Bulgars in the course of this narrative. But before becoming a sovereign state, the Khazars still had to serve their apprenticeship under another short-lived power, the so-called West Turkish Empire.
Now, I gotta ask, I wonder if they're in full possession of this knowledge today. You know, because we got Turkey that's kind of flexing its muscle Israel's way. I wonder if this was known.
Or Turkic Kingdom. It was a confederation of tribes, held together by a ruler, the Kagan or Kagan, or Kakan or Kakan or Chagan, etc. Orientalists have strong idiosyncrasies about spelling, see Appendix I. I shall stick to Kagan as the least offensive to Western eyes. The H in Khazar, however, is general usage, a title which the Khazar rulers too were subsequently to adopt. This first Turkish state, if one may call it that, lasted for a century, circa 550 to 650, and then fell apart, leaving hardly any trace. However, it was only after the establishment of this kingdom that the name Turk was used to apply to a specific nation, as distinct from other Turkic-speaking peoples like the Khazars and Bulgars. This, however, did not prevent the name Turk still being applied indiscriminately to any nomadic tribe of the steppes as a euphemism for barbarian, or a synonym for Hun. It led to much confusion in the interpretation of ancient sources. The Khazars had been under Hun tutelage, then under Turkish tutelage. After the eclipse of the Turks in the middle of the 7th century, it was their turn to rule the Kingdom of the North, as the Persians and Byzantines came to call it. According to one tradition, 15 the Great Persian king Khazars, and Ashurwan, the Blessed, had 3 golden guest thrones in his palace, reserved for the emperors of Byzantium, China, and of the Khazars. No state visits from these potentates materialized, and the golden thrones, if they existed, must have served a purely symbolic purpose. But whether fact or legend, the story fits in well with Emperor Constantine's official account of the triple gold seal assigned by the imperial chancery to the ruler of the Khazars.
So now my question is, folks, how can we not understand that these Israelis are jokes? How can we not grasp the concept that they are not the people they pretend to be? We have so much history that can be pointed directly in their direction. I see no way in any kind of Hebrew connection. Yeah, I went there.
Part 6. Thus, during the first few decades of the 7th century, just before the Muslim hurricane was unleashed from Arabia, the Middle East was dominated by a triangle of powers: Byzantium, Persia, and the West Turkish Empire. The first 2 of these had been waging intermittent war against each other for a century, and both seemed on the verge of collapse. In the sequel, Byzantium recovered, but the Persian kingdom was soon to meet its doom, and the Khazars were actually in on the kill.
Ooh.
They were still nominally under the suzerainty of the West Turkish kingdom, within which they represented the strongest effective force, and to which they were soon to succeed. Accordingly, in 627, the Roman Emperor Heraclius concluded a military alliance with the Khazars, the first of several to follow, in preparing his decisive campaign against Persia. There are several versions of the role played by the Khazars in that campaign, which seems to have been somewhat inglorious, but the principal facts are well established. The Khazars provided Heraclius with 40,000 horsemen under a chieftain named Zebul, who participated in the advance into Persia, but then, presumably fed up with the cautious strategy of the Greeks, turned back to lay siege on Tiflis. This was unsuccessful, but the next year they again joined forces with Heraclius, took the Georgian capital, and returned with rich plunder. Gibbon has given a colorful description, based on Theophanes, of the first meeting between the Roman emperor and the Khazar chieftain. Point 16. To the hostile league of Khosroes with the Avars, the Roman emperor opposed the useful and honorable alliance of the Turks. By Turks, as the sequel shows, he means the Khazars. At his liberal invitation, the horde of Kzars transported their tents from the plains of the Volga to the mountains of Georgia. Heraclius received them in the neighborhood of Tiflis, and the Khan with his nobles dismounted from their horses, if we may credit the Greeks, and fell prostrate on the ground, to adore the purple of the Caesar. Such voluntary homage and important aid were entitled to the warmest acknowledgments, and the emperor, taking off his own diadem, placed it on the head of the Turkish prince, whom he saluted with a tender embrace and the appellation of son. After a sumptuous banquet, he presented Zebul with the plate and ornaments, the gold, the gems, and the silk, which had been used at the imperial table, and, with his own hand, distributed rich jewels and earrings to his new allies. In a secret interview, he produced a portrait of his daughter Eudocia, condescended to flatter the barbarian with the promise of a fair and august bride, and obtained an immediate succor of 40,000 horse.
So, what they're doing here is establishing how the rise of the Khazarian state occurred. And we are going to be blessed with so much reading, and I've already heard. So, what I'm trying to do is just go down here to where there might be just a little bit more meat and less floury substance. Let me see if I can get somewhere that might begin to talk about their fall. Now, we can start anywhere here, believe that. It's an actual, an ongoing book that goes on ad infinitum. Let's start here. The Bulgar king's son held hostage by the king of Kzars. I just want to go through this a little bit.
The Bulgar king's son was held as a hostage by the king of the Khazars. It was reported to the king of the Khazars that the Bulgar king had a beautiful daughter. he sent a messenger to sue for her. The Bulgar king used pretexts to refuse his consent. The Khazars sent another messenger and took her by force, although he was a Jew and she a Muslim, but she died at his court. The Khazars sent another messenger and asked for the Bulgar king's other daughter. But in the very hour when the messenger reached him, the Bulgar king hurriedly married her to the prince of the Ashkel, who was his subject, for fear that the Khazar would take her too by force, as he had done with her sister.
So this is another look and peek into the history of these individuals, the dealings that they've had with other individuals. Now, look, got this. This is part two, the conversion. So I didn't have too much longer to go with part one. So let me see if I can get to a place where they had not, that they've been conquered yet. Let's see. Let's go to part 14 and see what he has to say.
Part 14. Hether the warrior on the golden jar is of Magyar or Khazar origin. He helps us to visualize the appearance of a cavalryman of that period, perhaps belonging to an elite regiment. Masudi says that in the Khazar army 7,000 of them, Istakri has 12,000. Ride with the king, archers with breastplates, helmets, and coats of mail. Some are lancers, equipped and armed like the Muslims. None of the kings in this part of the world has a regular standing army except the king of the Khazars. And Ibn Hakel, this king has 12,000 soldiers in his service, of whom when one dies, another person is immediate, ably chosen in his place. Here we have another important clue to the Khazar dominance, a permanent professional army, with a Praetorian Guard which, in peacetime, effectively controlled the ethnic patchwork, and in times of war served as a hardcore for the armed horde, which, as we have seen, may have swollen at times to 100,000 or more. According to Masudi, the royal army consisted of Muslims who immigrated from the neighborhood of Khwarizm. Long ago, after the appearance of Islam, there was war and pestilence in their territory, and they repaired to the Khazar king. When the king of the Khazars is at war with the Muslims, they have a separate place in his army and do not fight the people of their own faith. Quoted by Dunlop, 1954, page 206. That the army consisted of Muslims is of course an exaggeration, contradicted by Masudi himself a few lines later, where he speaks of the Muslim contingent having a separate place in the Khazar army. Also, Ibn Hakel says that the king has in his train 4,000 Muslims and this king has 2,000 soldiers in his service. The Khwarezmians probably formed a kind of Swiss guard within the army, and their compatriots talk of hostages, see above, section 10, may refer to them. Vice versa, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitus had a corps d'elite of Khazar guardsmen stationed at the gates of his palace. This was a privilege dearly bought. These guards were so well remunerated that they had to purchase their posts for considerable sums, on which their salaries represented an annuity varying from about 2.25 to 4%.
All right, so in the weeds they go, in the weeds they go. Look, folks, I definitely want to bring you an informative show. I did not want them to go on and on waxing philosophically. That's my job. So we're going to stop there. I think we're going to stop there as far as the reading fare. Conversions is the next step. Their conversion, the religion of the Hebrew rites. Oh, this is going to be good, but we're going to do it another time. Thank you so much for showing up to hear my prose and rhyme. Didn't want to do the disconnect in that particular manner, but hey, you work with what you get. That's what you do. All right, folks. Thanks so much for showing up. I appreciate it. My name again, Doug Rice. This is the Doug Rice Show. This was the Doug Rice Show. We've been on since about 8 o'clock. I wanted to go over the 13th tribe rise and fall of the Kzars. You at least know their rise and, well, you're going to see their fall, but appreciate you being here. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the show. Also, go to Go to twitware.com and save 10% off all your purchases using the promo code TDRS. Yeah, I barely got it out. All right, folks, thanks so much for your support. I'm going to get out of here. You'll be seeing me throughout the day. Shorts here. We'll get there. Hey, you guys get that grin off your face. Remember, I say it because that's what I do. Bye-bye.